hazardous materials, pipelines, come to order. I ask unanimous consent that the chairman be authorized to declare a recess at any time. Without objection, show that ordered. Ask unanimous consent that members who are not on the subcommittee be permitted to sit on the subcommittee and ask questions. Without objection, show that ordered. As a reminder to members, if you wish to insert a document into the record, please also email it to documents@mail.house.gov. Recognize myself for the purpose of opening statement for 5 minutes. The free enterprise system is responsible for generating the most efficient, innovative technologies for our modern world. In the global economy, technology advancements are some of our nation's greatest competitive achievements. Our national freight and passenger rail networks are no different from other sectors of the economy. Innovation and technology are vital to improving the rail industry's growth and safety outcomes. Ensuring that technology advancements and innovations continue to flourish will require a combination of right policies, particularly regulatory policies, to incentivize current and future research, development and deployment of new technology. Unfortunately, while our other government agencies, including those in the Department of Transportation, are embracing the promise of innovative and developing the right regulatory framework for its promotion, much of the Federal Railroad Administration regulatory framework remains a relic of the past. For example, most FRA regulations are prescriptive in how they require safety inspection and tasks to be conducted. They determine the frequency and means used to achieve regulatory compliance. Many of those regulations are written decades ago at a time when technology was limited or sometimes non-existent. However, we are here to examine technology's progress. Technological progress moves on, although the law allows railroads to apply for waivers to test new processes and technologies that can achieve safety objectives while improving efficiency. This current waiver process is less than transparent and subject to political interference. This regulatory uncertainty hinders both innovation and of the rail industry's ability to compete with others against other modes of freight transportation. As Congress begins consideration of legislation authorizing surface transportation programs, the agency and agencies we should look to promote policies that encourage innovation and investment in our rail system, improving both its safety and its ability to survive and thrive. This includes reforming the antiquated regulatory structure that is inhibiting innovation. Today's witnesses will provide important insight into how technologies have the potential to revolutionize freight and passenger rail transportation. We are interested in learning their views on what Congress can do to encourage innovation and bring to railroads into the 21st century. So now I recognize Representative Titus, a ranking member, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing and for our witnesses for testifying. As you mentioned, we're here today to discuss rail innovation. In the United States, our innovative spirit is one of our greatest strengths, and we should be harnessing this spirit to improve our transportation networks. Innovation has transformed both passenger and freight rail since the 19th century. This includes how locomotives are powered as we move from steam to diesel to electric. And now Brightline, which is going to be in my district, running from Las Vegas to Southern California, is bringing zero-emission, all-electric, high-speed rail to the forefront. This will create good union jobs, it will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and it'll make it easier, more convenient, quicker for people to travel between Las Vegas and Los Angeles. And once that's established, we think it will go far beyond. I'm interested in exploring today and hearing from the witnesses how we can use emerging technologies to combat cargo theft. This cost, excuse me, our economy between $15 and $30 billion each year. I held a roundtable to explore this issue earlier in the year and co-led a bipartisan bill that would create a federal task force to help address the issue. In addition to improving federal enforcement, technology can help shippers track rail cars and packages in real time, and that could be immensely helpful to combating this growing issue and make it safer for communities and people working on the rail lines. And speaking of real-time tracking, I'm also very interested in how innovation can make the shipping of hazardous materials safer. Hazardous material runs right through the heart of my district in Las Vegas, goes right by train, right down through the heart of town, and I want to be sure that my constituents and first responders are equipped with the information they need to respond to any incidents that might occur involving hazmat. Now, any conversation about innovation in the rail industry, like I mentioned, or others that may come up, have to include discussions of rail safety. We have a duty to ensure that advancements in technology do not come at the expense of the safety of workers, passengers, and the communities that trains pass through. That brings me to my next topic, which is traffic inspections. Automated traffic inspection, ATI, let me get all these acronyms straight, technology such as track geometry measurement systems, TGMS, can play an important role in identifying rail track defaults and in keeping passengers safe. These systems were first deployed in the 1970s, and they've been a good supplemental tool for inspecting the 140,000 miles of track we have across the United States. There are not any regulations that prohibit any railroad from using these track geometry measurement systems or any other automated track inspection technology. I want to say, though, that ATI should not replace visual in-person track inspections. The National Transportation Safety Board, another acronym NTSB, has cautioned against replacing visual track inspections with ATI. This is because ATI cannot look for 17 different types of track defects that a human inspector can identify. This includes broken rails, drainage issues, track obstructions, trespassers, vandalisms, and washouts. I sent a letter with Ranking Member Larson to Secretary Duffy urging the Federal Railroad Administration to not grant a safety waiver that would allow Class I railroads to reduce visual track safety inspections from twice a week to twice a month. Now, that's a big difference, and that's what they're asking for. The safety waiver request also asked the FRA to give the largest railroads 72 hours to address defects instead of immediately addressing them, as current regulations require. I would also ask, Mr. Chairman, unanimous consent that a letter be included in today's record, that letter. Okay, thank you very much. As the subcommittee works on surface transportation reauthorization, I look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, and the chairs of the committees on provisions that will push us into the next generation of rail with robust and dedicated investment while improving and upholding rail safety, always at the forefront. I would now ask if we could submit a letter from the Brotherhood of Railroad Signalmen to be entered into the record that addresses some of the safety issues I brought up. Well, thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for holding the hearing, and I look forward to having those questions addressed that I've mentioned. Thank you, and I yield back.
Now I'd like to recognize welcome our witnesses and thank them for being here. It's good to have you today. Thank you look forward to hearing what you have to say. If you take a moment to tell you about the lighting system. Green means go, yellow means it's time to wrap it up, red means time to quit. It's pretty simple. Ask unanimous consent that the witness's full statements be included in the record. Without objection, show that ordered. Ask unanimous consent that the record of today's hearing remain open until such time as our witnesses have provided answers to any questions that may be submitted in writing. Without objection, show that ordered. Ask unanimous consent that the record remain open for 15 days for additional comments and information submitted by members or witnesses to be included in the record of today's hearing. Without objection, show that ordered. As your testimony, written testimony, has been made a part of public record, the subcommittee asks you to limit your oral remarks to 5 minutes. And with that, I'll call on Mr. Shannon. You're recognized for 5 minutes for your testimony.
Good morning, Chairman Webster, Ranking Member Titus, and distinguished members of the Rail Subcommittee. I'm David Shannon, General Manager of RailPulse LLC, and it's an honor to appear before you today on behalf of a diverse coalition of railcar owners, all united in a common purpose: to grow the use of freight rail transportation in North America through innovation. At the heart of this innovation is telematics on railcars, the installation of GPS and smart sensors on railcars that provide real-time information about their location, condition, and health. These technologies may sound technical, but their purpose is simple: to make rail more competitive, transparent, and reliable mode of freight transportation. And this matters because when more freight moves by rail, the public benefits. Rail is more fuel efficient, sustainable, and safer than trucking on a per ton mile basis, and shifting freight from road to rail reduces highway congestion, cuts infrastructure wear, and lowers transportation costs across the supply chain. Growth in rail isn't just an industry objective, it's in the national interest. But rail cannot grow without change. Shippers have told us clearly why they choose trucks: reliable on-time performance, shipment visibility, and equipment availability and capacity. RailPulse was created to deliver the data that can be used to address these issues, not just for individual companies, but for the system as a whole. Formed in 2021, the coalition came together out of the realization that no single company or class of companies could solve these issues. Fragmented adoption of telematics would be slow and inconsistent. But by collaborating, sharing expertise, data, investment, and equal governance, we could build something transformative. Today, reflecting the diversity of railcar ownership, RailPulse members come from all classes. Bunge North America, a shipper; GATX, Greenbrier, Trinity Rail, railcar lessors; G&W, Railroad Development Corporation, and Watco, all short-line railroads; and CPKC, CSX, Norfolk Southern, and Union Pacific, all Class I railroads. With the help of a CRISI grant, Federal Railroad Administration in the state of Pennsylvania, RailPulse launched a multi-phase pilot project to test these concepts. We equipped more than 1,000 railcars of different types, tank cars, auto racks, box cars, and more, with advanced sensors and GPS devices from multiple vendors. We proved that data could be captured, standardized, and shared securely to all authorized stakeholders, and all in real time. Following the pilot, RailPulse platform was officially launched across North America in September 2024, and we're now seeing strong interest and adoption. But we face two critical challenges. The first I'll call the growth to value paradox. While our growth has been impressive by traditional measures for a technology startup, over 17 times since the pilot ended, it is nowhere near good enough. Only when a majority of the 1.6 million rail cars in North America are equipped will we see the true system-wide impact. It's only then that railroads can begin to leverage the telematics data to change their operating practices, that we can begin to contemplate new regimes for safety, and that we can implement broad-scale predictive railcar maintenance strategies to increase the safety of the railcar fleet. But getting there requires accelerated investment, and to that end, we urge Congress to support financial incentives to help railcar owners equip faster. Second, I'll call the railcar innovator's dilemma. The rail industry needs to embrace the same fail-fast ethos that has driven American technology leadership globally. But right now, even when there are internal funds available for investment, there is concern. Concern that innovations early adopters invest in might be undercut by future regulation or technology specification. We need a regulatory environment that is outcome-focused and supports, even incentivizes experimentation and innovation. especially for monitoring technologies that don't directly affect the rail car's operation. If companies are willing to test unproven tools responsibly, they should be very actively supported. In closing, I want to thank the committee for your time and attention today. What RailPulse is doing is historic. For the first time, a diverse set of railcar owners are working together to modernize freight rail system at a foundational level. With your partnership, the continued support of the FRA and others, and with shared commitment, we can digitize all 1.6 million rail cars in North America, and we can shift the perception and reality of rail as a smart, safe, sustainable mode of freight transportation. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. McCown, you recognize for 5 minutes for your testimony.
Thank you very much, Chairman Webster, Ranking Member Titus, members of the subcommittee. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today. I'm here in my capacity as the chair of the Alliance for Innovation and Infrastructure. AII is a nonpartisan, independent think tank developed over a decade ago, focused on advancing pragmatic solutions to improving safety, fostering innovation, and strengthening America's infrastructure systems. Today's hearing touches on a crucial issue. As we invest in rebuilding and expanding American infrastructure, critical linchpin for not only our domestic economy, but for our global economic competitiveness, we must ensure that our regulatory framework evolve alongside the technology shaping 21st century transportation. The challenge before us is not partisan, it's practical. Modernization done right enhances both safety and competitiveness. We can protect American jobs while making our infrastructure smarter, more efficient, and more resilient. Technology is not the enemy of safety. It is often its greatest ally. AII's recent report, Driving Regulatory Innovation for Safer Railroading, reveals significant friction between the current regulatory approach and the adoption of safety-enhancing tools. In the last 5 years, nearly 70% of Class I railroads have sought waivers from the Federal Railroad Administration to use technologies like automatic track inspection. Yet 40% of those waivers took more than 6 months or longer to be approved, many with limited or no explanation. As a former federal regulator, let me say that this isn't about shortcuts. It's about ensuring that when railroads deploy rigorously tested systems that improve defect detection and reduce risk, they should be embraced. The concern is that if the regulatory system moves too slowly with proven technology, how can we expect it to move at all when innovation comes knocking? The regulator must be equipped to fairly and swiftly evaluate new innovations. To FRA's credit, a recent proposed rule on ATI acknowledges the need for reform, but it still leans on outdated assumptions, such as mandatory visual inspections, even where automated systems have demonstrated superior performance. FRA's proposal lacks key elements of a modern regulatory design, objective standards, structured timelines, and transparent decision-making. We should move away from prescription and toward an outcome-based approach of continuous improvement like those found in safety management systems. Safety and technology go hand in hand, and continuous improvements require regulators to rethink how they regulate. By the time a regulation is written, the technology is already outdated because today's technology moves at the speed of light. This regulatory lag, it's inherent in the system, is innovation's worst detractor. We are, in many cases across government, literally discouraging technology from being developed. That same approach can benefit the rail safety. As I've said, safety and innovation are not mutually exclusive. When regulations reward validated results, regardless of the method used, we empower both workers and innovators to contribute to a stronger system. I do also recognize that workforce concerns are real. New technologies can be deployed in ways that enhance the ability of workers to complete their task more efficiently. Technological innovations often require more people, not less. You may recall when Americans were told that word processors, computers, and printers would make our lives a life of leisure. But that hasn't exactly turned out that way. Technology, though, improves our ability to do more. And that is important because more needs to be done. Technology is that secret sauce of the American economy, and it can be leveraged to improve infrastructure the companies regulated by it, and the regulator itself. AII does not advocate for deregulation, but it supports smarter regulations that empower innovation, increase efficiency, and resilience of the infrastructure while protecting communities and ensuring tax dollars are wisely spent. Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, I commend your bipartisan leadership and the important work that you all are doing. This hearing is a step toward building a regulatory framework that reflects America's capacity for innovation and responsibility. Thank you again for the opportunity to contribute, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Gebhardt, you are recognized for 5 minutes for your testimony.
Chairman Webster, Ranking Member Titus, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear today. I'm Eric Gebhardt. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer of the Wabtec Corporation, testifying on behalf of the Railway Supply Institute. Wabtec's commitment to innovation stretches back to George Westinghouse's 1869 invention of the automatic air brake. And today, our 29,000-person global workforce, including 12,000 U.S. employees, helps move roughly 1/5 of the world's freight through our locomotives, braking systems, and digital platforms. RSI's more than 200-member companies support tens of thousands of American jobs and share a mission of advancing safety, innovation, and network efficiency across the rail system. For Wabtec, that mission comes to life through 3 pillars of modernization: accident prevention, asset health monitoring, and network utilization. For accident prevention, Wabtec's interoperable electronic train management system and positive train control continuously monitor train location and speed on more than 24,000 North American locomotives, preventing train-to-train collisions, overspeed derailments, work zone incursions, and movements through misaligned switches. Our enhanced wayside to asset communications support real-time information exchange for automatic train control and early hazard warnings, creating an integrated digital safety net. This integrated approach gives railroads and regulators the tools to prevent and mitigate accidents, and exemplifies how Wabtec and the broader RSI membership are turning continuous improvements into concrete safety gains. Wabtec and RSI have been at the forefront of deploying asset health monitoring and predictive maintenance systems. Preventing the next incident means spotting defects early. Wabtec's kinetics inspection technologies combine machine vision, laser scanning, acoustic and thermal sensing, and AI analytics to assess the condition of locomotives, freight cars, and track components. Onboard diagnostics track vibration, fuel flow, and pressure against fleet baselines to predict component fatigue, while railcar telematics turn freight cars into connected assets that broadcast mileage, impact shocks, and handbrake status. By shifting from calendar-based to condition-based maintenance, railroads reduce failures and keep equipment in service longer. For network utilization, Wabtec's Trip Optimizer, an EPA-certified smart cruise control, calculates an optimal speed profile and automatically manages throttle and dynamic brakes, delivering about 10% fuel savings and more than 400 million gallons conserved to date. Complementing Trip Optimizer, real-time planning solutions optimize the train network to unlock additional mainline capacity, and cloud-based yard management platforms trim idle time and the on-foot exposure that causes many-yard injuries. The Tier 4 modernized locomotives reinforce these digital tools, achieving 76% lower NOx, 70% lower particulate matter, and up to 30% better fuel economy than previous generations. To maintain this progress, we respectfully recommend 3 federal actions. 1, sustain and grow federal investments, particularly the CRISI program, with dedicated set-asides for digital safety and advanced inspection platforms, so railroads of all sizes can accelerate deployment of these critical technologies. 2, expand FRA research, development, demonstration, and deployment capabilities to advance AI-enabled inspections, collision avoidance systems, and alternative fuel locomotives. And 3, modernize and streamline regulatory processes so that technologies with proven risk reduction benefits can move more quickly to demonstration and widespread use. In conclusion, modern technology has become an indispensable driver of rail safety, reliability, and efficiency. These improvements protect our communities, strengthen supply chains, and fuel economic growth. Wabtec Corporation, together with RSI and its member companies, is committed to advancing the next generation of life-saving and efficiency-enhancing technologies. We appreciate congressional support through past initiatives, and we believe continued partnership is crucial. On behalf of Wabtec and RSI, thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Cardwell, you're recognized for 5 minutes for your testimony.
Chairman Webster, Ranking Member Titus, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Tony Cardwell, and I am the president of the Brotherhood of Maintenance Away Employees Division of the International Teamsters. I was elected to lead our national union in 2022. BMWD members are the railroad workers who build and maintain the tracks, bridges, buildings, and other critical infrastructure that support both freight and passenger rail service across the United States. I began my railroad career when I was hired by the Union Pacific Railroad, and I have 25 years of seniority on the Oregon Division. Throughout my career, I have witnessed firsthand the industry's evolution, particularly in areas such as safety, technology, and innovation. A common misconception is that the unions are anti-technology. Let me be clear, the BMWD is not anti-technology. We support innovation when it improves safety for the general public and enhances the working conditions of our members. In BMWD's 138-year history, we have consistently embraced significant technological advancements in the rail industry, especially when those changes have made the railroad safer for the communities we serve. As president of the BMWD, I negotiate agreements with the railroads. We understand that in 50 years, railroad work will look far different. What I will not do is trade safety for convenience or allow the railroads to do so in the name of chasing the latest piece of technology. No advancement is worth risking the safety of the constituents you serve in the communities where our members work and live. Nearly 2 years after East Palestine disaster, the railroad's lobbyists are once again putting safety on the line. This time, they are targeting the safety-sensitive work my members perform, seeking to weaken inspection standards in order to satisfy Wall Street's short-term expectations. BMWD's track inspectors perform FRA-mandated visual inspections of railroad track twice a week. During these inspections, they look for 27 different variations of track defects. ATI cannot find 73% of track defects. 73%. As we speak here today, the Association of American Railroads, on behalf of the Class 1 railroads, is asking the FRA for a safety waiver that would reduce the frequency of these inspections by 75%, cutting them from twice a week to just twice a month. The same waiver would allow railroads up to 72 hours to address defect after it is identified. Under current FRA regulations, human track inspections are required to remedy the defect immediately. Allowing trains carrying passengers or hazardous materials to travel over compromised track for up to 3 days is an unacceptable risk. We fully support the use of ATI to supplement visual inspections, not to eliminate them. ATI cannot replace the work that track inspectors perform. It only identifies one category of defects, which is track geometry. It cannot detect 73% of derailment-causing defects, such as broken rails, numerous switch defects, loose bolts, and many more. If the railroads succeed in securing this waiver, rail safety will be significantly weakened. We will see more derailments, some of which could be as catastrophic as East Palestine or even worse. Imagine if an event like that were to happen in the heart of the districts you represent. That is why BMWD has launched a national campaign to oppose this waiver. We believe it would be devastating to our constituents and the safety of rail workers. We are grateful for the support of Ranking Members Larson and Tyson and urge all members of Congress to join us in standing against this proposal. While a track defect did not cause the East Palestine derailment, Norfolk Southern failed to give Carmen workers inspecting the train enough time to do their jobs. East Palestine was a tragic reminder of the FRA mandate inspections. Whether of track, signal systems, rail cars, locomotives, or grade crossings, they are all essential. They all matter. The East Palestine derailment should have been avoided. My message to the railroads and the companies developing rail technology is simple. Partner with us to get it right. We are not opposed to innovation or technological change. However, it must be implemented in a way that safeguards the communities across the country where our members work and live. I want to be extremely clear. BMWD will not stand by if waivers are accepted and place you and your constituents at risk. If the AAR waivers is granted, it will expose the American people to imminent danger. At a time like this, we should be reminded of the words of the Holy Bible, Ezekiel 33:6. But if the watchman sees the enemy coming and does not sound the alarm to warn the people, he is responsible for their death. We see the dangers coming. We are sounding the alarm. The question before you now is, will the warning be heard? Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you all for your testimony. We'll now turn to questions from the panel. I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. So, Mr. McCown, your organization recently issued a report highlighting how under the Biden administration, the waiver process broke down. How do politics such as this conflict with the Federal Railroad Administration's stated mission of enabling the safe, reliable, efficient moving of people and goods?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. The report focuses on the fact that technology continues to evolve and the regulatory framework hasn't kept pace. And you're referring to limiting political whiplash, which is one of the 5 recommendations. And in technical safety decisions, we need to ensure that regulatory outcomes are based on data and that they are consistent with standards, not shifting political priorities. When you don't know what the rules of the game are from the regulator, it's hard to comply, number one, and number two, it's impossible to deploy capital.
So can you describe the importance of kind of a transparent regulatory process to achieve FRA's mission?
I'm sorry, was that to me, sir?
Yes.
Yes, it's critical. It's impossible to comply with the rules if you don't know what the rules are, and it's impossible to plan when decisions appear haphazard or decisions change. This should be nonpartisan, not something where the rules change depending on who's in the White House.
Okay. So when railroads ask for an automated track inspection, manual inspection, they seek a waiver there. These waivers are often used in technologies to proactively and strategically address potential track safety issues, not simply eliminate manual inspections. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So let me just get this straight. Okay, there's technology, and some of it's pretty advanced, makes some great things done. Does it have 100% reliability? Anybody?
I'll answer. You need people to interpret the data, that's clear. But the technology, in many cases, is more accurate than the people. The technology is better than my eyeball. That's just fact. If that were the case, we wouldn't take x-rays when we go to the doctor's office.
So, but on the other hand, there's a manual inspection that takes a person. What do they do? What do they look for? Anybody can answer that question. Tell me about a manual inspection.
The manual inspectors or the visual inspections that are done, they're able to catch a lot of defects that can't be caught by the track geometry. machines, which is the ATI. And so the visual inspections can catch all kinds of defects and preventative defects in advance of the defects becoming worse. But there's numerous defects that the ATI track geometry can't catch, such as just as simple as a broken rail. The track geometry machines do not pick up a broken rail, and that's just a basic track defect. Happens all the time, every night across the country.
So there's also an automated track inspection. And so is that quicker? Does it look at less things than a manual inspection does? What's the difference?
Is that question for me?
Anybody?
The ATI machine does catch track geometry defects, and it is efficient at catching track geometry defects. We love the work that ATI does on the tracks, as our track inspectors appreciate the track geometry machines that come through and catch those defects. But what they don't catch is what the visual eye can catch, and that's a lot of the basic defects that are out there. It catches about 6. There's 23 codes in the FRA, and it catches about 6 of those defects, and they're all track geometry, the measurements of the track surface, track gauge, things of that nature.
So is it better, the same, faster? What's the difference?
For track geometry, I'd argue that it does a better job for track geometry, but it doesn't catch a large percentage of the defects that are out there. It only catches about 26 or 27% of the defects on the track.
So is it checking the track or the vehicle's mechanical parts, or both?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Is it checking the track itself or the mechanical parts on the car itself, like wheels, axles, things like that? What does?
I believe you're referring to the geometry tool detects the track. That's a different technology from, say, hot bearings or other aspects on the cars themselves.
So, okay, so there's a hot bearing. Does that show up in a manual inspection, or does it take a rolling automated inspection?
What was the question again? Yeah, on the hot bearing detectors, they're different. We represent the track inspectors that do the work, but I would say that hot bearing detectors, the best thing that can be done to detect those is a strong visual inspection, and that was what was said by the STB as well after the East Palestine derailment. There is technology that catches it, but the technology doesn't relay the information as quickly as it should, obviously, as seen, and the technology isn't as prevalent out there as it should be. The detectors were too far apart in the East Palestine derailment as what was decided by the STB. There should be more of them out there. There wasn't enough, and that was the determination from the STB report.
Okay, I'm way over. Sorry about that, but thank you for your answers. I appreciate that. So, Ms. Titus, you're recognized.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to continue this conversation because I said in my opening remarks, I think there were 17 defects that couldn't be found by this geometry technology that need the eye to see them. And Mr. McCown, I think you need a different analogy from the eye and the x-ray machine, because every time you have an x-ray, then you got to have a person come in and read that x-ray. It doesn't read itself and find the problem and take care of it. So maybe we can go back to you, Mr. Cardwell. Talk again about some of these defects that a person can see if they're out there inspecting that this technology can't find. And tell us how many of these you might find in a week or a month. How prevalent are they? And how trained do you have to be to find these things? I mean, it's not just somebody walking down the track. These are experts who are looking for these kinds of things just in case, because they are such safety problems.
Thank you for the question, Congressman Titus. It takes an immense amount of time to become a track inspector, and a lot of studies and research and testing that is done before you can become a qualified track inspector. So yes, they are very skilled workers, and they are able to find defects that no technology can find. And they're also able to rationally deal with the defects as they come. For example, when you run into a track defect, it's not always just a defect that is caused by some random thing. It's usually a multitude of issues that are causing that defect. So for example, there could be water issues in the area that cause a surface level issue. The ATI machines are unable to determine that there's a water problem. The visual inspections, you are able to see that there's a water problem or there's a drainage issue or there's a lot of mud or issue in that track, which is causing a surface issue, which causes the rail cars to tip off the rail and cause derailment. When we come up to those defects, as a visual track inspection is being done, we can look at the different, the environment that we're in, and we can make determinations on what can fix the issue. And we can also prevent the track defect, which is most important. There's no preventative maintenance being done by ATI. The human inspections are what do preventative maintenance before the defect is caused. Remember, we want to find defects before it happens, not after, because the derailments, defects are what cause derailments.
Under the current regulations, if you find one of these defects, don't you have to report it and have it addressed immediately, or else there's some kind of fines or issues that arise if you don't?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Don't you have to report this and have it addressed immediately, or else there are some fines imposed on the railroad if that doesn't happen, or on the inspector?
Yeah, the waiver is asking for a 72-hour, 3 days before the defect has to be corrected.
I want to ask about that too. I think Mr. McCown, in the waiver, even though it's 72 hours, if you don't inspect it, there's no fine or anything, any consequences. Is there? Isn't that a part of the waiver too?
There is no fine, but I think you have to put this in context that
Well,
if...
that seems to me a pretty big context if you're taking away the fine, if you're not going to address the problem.
Well, is it a problem? This is so specific.
We
it
don't know
finds-
with your technology if we don't have a person out there looking at it.
Well, just like in other modes, this technology finds things that are so minimal, they may be a wait and see. They may not need to be addressed right away. If BNSF's testing says you find 200 times more defects with this tool than a visual inspection, it's depicting very minute issues that may not require immediate action. And so, I think it has to be ranked according to safety. And the Congress you all can decide what timeline is appropriate, but not everything's an overnight problem.
Who determines that, a wait and see? I'm not sure I want to be on a train on a track that's a wait and see. Who makes that decision if it's too minute to address immediately?
It's a safety risk management decision that operators make every single day of the week in every mode of transportation. That's what we do. We're professional risk mitigation experts.
Bean counters?
I'm sorry?
I just said bean counters. That's all right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Mr. Razzle, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate each of you being here today to share your wisdom and testimony. Mr. Gebhardt, I'm going to start with you. When a rail infrastructure project is undertaken, whether it's upgrading a corridor, modernizing a yard, or deploying new technologies, is it just the businesses and communities in the immediate vicinity that see the benefit? Or do these projects tend to generate broader regional or even national economic impact?
Well, I think as any of these projects would be done, there's broader impact that would come.
Can you bring that microphone a little closer to you? Thank you.
There's broader impact that would come from this. If we think about if there's new railway equipment that has to be utilized there's a broad network across the country with RSI or Wabtec in particular here that may provide that equipment there. It could also open up opportunities to move more freight by rail, which is the safest and cleanest way to move a ton mile, which could also open up some of the interstates and such there from what would have been truck traffic along those ways there. So there is a lot of benefits that come from this.
So another strong interest of the committee is how federal grant programs can help drive innovation. Specifically, the Christie program is first and foremost shaped to improve rail infrastructure safety and performance. But you noted much of the industry, from short lines to suppliers, have looked to use these grants as a way to deploy and scale promising technologies. Has Wabtec directly utilized Christie funding to advance or deploy new technologies?
So Wabtec tends to work with others for some of these grants here, where someone else may be the prime recipient of it and will work with them, or could also provide the technologies. One of the keys is that we've been working very diligently on both Tier 4 technology, which reduces NOx by 76% and particulate matter by 70%, and also been working on modernizations, where we take older technology, we upgrade them, take them from DC to AC technology, and really bring new life to them. And by doing that, we can improve efficiency by 30% and improve haulageability, how much you can actually pull a tractive effort, by 50%. And now with the IIJA Act, it opened up these opportunities to the short lines, where they could utilize those funding to upgrade to Tier 4 technology and also modernize their locomotives. So it's been very beneficial.
So would you rate the Christie program essential program or non-essential program?
Oh, I would say we would recommend keeping it at its current levels that are in the IIJA, and then we would even think of even increasing the amount of grants for FRA to do more R&D, because we really do need to be developing this future technology that's out there a little bit further.
Mr. Shannon, I'm going to come to you next. Federal regulations and implementation always seem to lag behind the pace of technological innovation, making it difficult to create the most efficient system possible in many cases. So we have freight railroads that deploy increasingly advanced diagnostics and real-time data tools to help monitor car and track conditions, yet many of the ways we evaluate rail safety, operations, and equipment date back decades, some even to the steam locomotive era. Mr. Shannon, if Congress were to mandate the use of thermal wayside detectors, what impact would that have on you and the efforts of your customers to invest in rail car, telematics, and similar monitoring technologies?
I think the concern that comes to for us is that, the outcome is what we would like to see focused on, which is, identifying hot bearings, failing bearings, wheel defects, et cetera, before they become emergency conditions. If we regulate a specific solution, say more wayside detectors, that's gonna sort of remove the motivation for both the car owners and the technology developers to invest their time and energy to create the technologies for the rail cars themselves, that you put on the rail cars themselves, that show the promise and have done in other industries extremely effectively of giving early detection before this becomes a critical failure mode, so that the car owner has the opportunity to replace wheels, to do the maintenance activities ahead of failure, where wayside detectors tend to be more closer to time of failure when they detect the ultimate issue.
Yeah. Well, as they say, prevention is always the best cure, no matter what we're talking about. I yield back.
Mr. Moulton, you're recognized for 5 minutes for your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to actually pick up where my colleague, Mr. Rouser, just left off. I agree, Mr. Rouser, that prevention is better. But I would add that if you have telematics that can be simultaneously or constantly monitored by the engineer, then you would also know the instant that a hot bearing is detected on a car, regardless of whether you're near a hot bearing detector. Is that right, Mr. Shannon?
That would be correct. Telematics on the rail car is going to give whoever the recipient of the data the most immediate insights as to the condition of the wheel. But again, I think the thing that we need to consider is the best use of this technology is to prevent the rail car from reaching the point where the bearing does
Well,
get
maybe
so
that's the
hot
case,
it's gonna
but if
fail.
it improves safety to also have it
Absolutely.
available, I mean, why would we not do that as well? And my point is the same as Mr. Rausser's, which is that if we have modern technology that can bring the accident rate down to zero, then that's what we should be using, not installing more 1960s technology, which is the hot bearing detectors that the railroads have. I mean, I assume you care about transportation and you're not buying an awful lot of fax machines because that was the communications technology about in the 1960s, right?
Yes, I think I agree with what
You're
you're saying.
hesitating on that, which
I-
makes me
I'm only
worried that
hesitating to
you're,
make sure
you're
I
still in the market
understand.
for fax machines.
No, I
But-
don't want more fax machines,
Okay,
definitely not.
well, that's the point. So
More
there's a lot of
technology on
there's a
rail
lot of
cars.
agreement here that we've got to get into the 21st century.
Absolutely.
And we have technology available today. I mean, the fact that I can order something for $1.99 on Amazon and know exactly where that package is on the way to my house, and yet I can spend $15,000 or $20,000 to ship a rail car across the United States and have no idea where it is, no idea when it will arrive, is a little absurd.
That's a great concern, and it is one of the key reasons RailPulse exists, is to provide a single source of truth for the location, condition, and health of the rail cars using advanced telematics technologies on the rail cars themselves.
Right. So there are improvements in customer service because you know where your car
Absolutely.
is, and there are obviously improvements in safety that we've detailed. And you also made the point that the more freight that we get off of trucks and onto rail is good for the national interest. Those are your words. In 2023, there were 22,543 hazardous material incidents on highways compared to 297 freight rail hazmat incidents. It's a pretty stark statistic. And railroads have approximately 10% of the hazmat accidents trucks have, despite roughly equal hazmat ton mileage. 10%. So we'd be saving a lot of lives, a lot of money, if more hazmat, just to take hazmat as an example, let alone broader freight, were transported by rail instead of truck. From 2012 to 2023, there were 82 fatalities on highways due to hazmat accidents, 0 railway deaths. But Mr. Cardwell made a very good point, which is that the railroads, especially in the last 10 or so years, have a history of taking every cost-saving measure and not putting it into expanding their traffic, to actually getting more trucks off the highways. They put it into cutting service, cutting employees, and just improving profits for Wall Street. So how do we square this circle where we want rail traffic to increase, we want technology to help us get there, but we don't want the companies to just give all the profits to Wall Street and none of the benefits to the American people? Mr. Cardwell, please.
I would say that we're more than willing to have the ATI machinery operated in technology. We actually have pushed for more of it. We believe that they should use the ATI regularly. The last proposal that was given from the FRA was for 3 times a year, and the railroad spoke against ATI. Now they're saying they want to do it 12 times a year and get rid of all the visual, 75% of the visual inspections.
So here's my point,
We
and
think they should work in tandem together.
Look, I've only got 20 seconds left, but here's my point. I agree with what you're saying. Mr. Shannon, I agree with what you're saying. Why can't we get on the same page here? Why won't you invite the rail unions into discussion, into the coalition? You don't even have all the Class 1s yet. Let's involve some of the rail unions in this debate.
The answer to that question is fairly simple. RailPulse is, chartered and owned by railcar owners, and it would be, we don't own the data that's in RailPulse, and so how the data is used, within the railroads when they get access to it is really a railroad thing.
That has nothing to do with inviting the likes of Mr. Cardwell to the table. We all should share the same goals, which is increasing traffic by rail. You are part of the solution, but his workers are part of the solution too, and they have a pretty good perspective. So I just hope you can work more together in the future.
We would
Thank you,
agree
Mr.
with
Chairman.
that.
I yield back.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lamatha, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, it's interesting, the debate going here, it seems to boil down to, does advancing technology mean we have less workers? And I don't necessarily think that that's what needs to happen, having less workers or also stand in the way of improved technology. So I guess, Mr. Cardwell, let me ask you quickly, do you see that what's advancing here on the bottom line means that there will be less workers on the rail because it'll be replaced by technology and be replaced by self-regulation, et cetera?
We've seen a mass reduction, 30%, up to 30% reduction since 2016 in our workforce.
Because of
That's
technology?
expected with some technology, yes. We understand that technology is going to eliminate some jobs. In fact, from 138 years ago, we've seen thousands of railroading jobs lost because of technology.
Yeah, I read your outline on that, tampers and all the way through that labor saving and made it easier on the workers, but has resulted in less workers. But I guess what you're looking at here, do you believe what we're talking about here with this advanced telemetry and such, if that's implemented, does that mean less workers?
I'm sorry, what was the question one more time?
With this additional telemetry and more advanced technology, does that mean less workers to you?
I can't hear. Yeah, the waiver's asking for a 75% reduction in human inspection, visual inspection.
Okay, let me throw it to Mr. McCown or Mr. Shannon on that. Is that your goal here, is that you will have actually less online workers because of the technology makes that possible?
Well, I think from the think tank's perspective, we're agnostic on that solution. But I think what it does is the people who are the finders are also the fixers. It allows you to redeploy your assets to where they're needed most. As I mentioned during my opening, technology often makes more work to be done, not less work. And I think we're getting stuck between this either or, and it's not.
That's what I'm wondering. Mr. Shannon?
Yeah, I would agree with what Mr. McCown said. The technology is not designed to eliminate work. It's actually designed to make the work more effective, more productive by highlighting and identifying issues. And those issues then need to be worked on by somebody. They need to be evaluated and verified, and then as appropriate, any repairs and other actions need to be taken. There's nothing at what RailPulse is advocating for to eliminate jobs.
All right, Mr. McCown, a bit earlier there was a discussion about the technology at a more micro level can find maybe more flaws. Maybe you're talking about a piece of rail where you can find a very micro crack or something, for example, that maybe a visual inspection would easily pass over. So now we know about that micro crack, and you were talking about like, well, does it rise to the level of repair right now? I mean, if my pickup has a dent in it, it doesn't keep me from going out in my fields, but if I got a bent frame or a leaking axle or something, then that does. So can you comment a little bit more on the action level of what your technology finds as to, you kind of talked about a risk trade-off, like it was a slight crack in the rail that visually wouldn't be seen, wouldn't even be known about. Does that mean you got to repair the rail, that type of thinking?
Thank you for the question, sir. That's a very good point. And if you think about it, we have preventive tests. It's to make a holistic assessment of the infrastructure asset over its entire lifetime. If you can find things early, you can watch them to see if it's getting worse, if a defect is propagating, or it's not. It's crucial for the risk management, and it's integral in an SMS type of approach, which is about continually raising the bar. But not every defect requires immediate action. That's the analysis part that takes people.
Okay. Mr. Shannon, is the FRA standing in the way of the advancing technology? My notes are saying there seems to be somewhat holdup that FRA wants to just stick with old technology and is kind of not embracing the ability to integrate new in its regulation.
To date, FRA has been supportive of what we're trying to do at RailPulse. So I don't know that they're necessarily standing in the way. However, if they advocate for specific technologies and sort of shut down innovation in the process, that would stand in the way.
They may be seeking to lock in technologies is what I'm kind of hearing, but are they open enough to look at what we're talking about here to let it be approved?
I would say they've been open to RailPulse,
All right.
for sure.
Mr.
They've
Chairman,
been
I'll yield
supportive
back.
of what
Thank
we're
you.
trying to do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sykes.
I'm down here. Thank you so much,
Sorry.
Chairman. And thank you, Ranking Member Titus, for holding this hearing today. To our guests and witnesses, thank you for being here as well. I have many times in this committee raised the issue of rail safety, and I think today's hearing on how our nation can modernize our rail system is a perfect place to address it again. As you all know, and as we have discussed today, on February 3rd, 2023, a Norfolk Southern train carrying hazardous chemicals derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, which is right next door to my district in Northeast Ohio, causing many issues and long-term issues for folks in not only Ohio, but our neighboring state of Pennsylvania. Certainly no one should have to deal with the horror and fallout of what occurred from this disastrous derailment. But what is even more upsetting is that this entire derailment originated from a wheel bearing that failed and a wayside detector that failed to identify the issue in time. Because these detectors are placed over 20 miles apart, this overheated bearing was only noticed after any effective action could be taken to save the bearing and prevent the catastrophe that we saw that day. In my time as a state legislator, I've kept with me this advice from our public safety director, who reminded us that if something is predictable, it is preventable. And it's maddening because this incident was predictable and preventable, and because neither of those things happen, an entire community has been upended with little done to rectify their safety and their concerns. So to ensure that this kind of disaster doesn't happen again, I introduced the RAIL Act. It is a bipartisan, common sense piece of legislation that, among other things, includes policies that specifically address the issues of failing wayside detectors. If the RAIL Act were signed into law, wayside detectors and hot boxes would be required every 10 miles of track rather than 20. Were this policy back in place in February of 2023, this tragedy could have been prevented altogether, and we would not be worrying about the long-term health effects of a controlled burn in eastern Ohio. But during the investigation of the disaster, it was also reported that rail cars were being dispatched after giving an inspector only 30 seconds to inspect each side of the rail car. 30 seconds is hardly enough time to get around and walk around the trail car, let alone check one to confirm that it is safe to transport potentially hazardous cargo. And some of these trains, as you know, are double stacked and miles long. So I'm happy to report that after working with various labor groups, the RAIL Act also required the Department of Transportation to update rail car inspection regulations and audit related inspection programs. And this will prevent limiting the time for employees to do these complete rail car and locomotive checks. So Mr. Cardwell, if you could please speak to the importance of ensuring that these safety inspections, whether for tracks or rail cars, aren't rushed, because one thing I've noticed in this conversation, and other colleagues have mentioned, technology and the rail workers should go hand in hand and be complementary to one another. But if you are shortchanged with even your ability to do the work, then what good is the technology?
The answer is yes. All of us, all the crafts are fine with the technology that's coming in, and we want to work with them to develop this technology and make sure that it works well. So we do want to work in tandem with these different technologies. I'll remind you and the rest of the committee that the railroads have the ability to use this technology as much as they want to. The key factor is they're trying to eliminate the human factor, the human inspections, to cut cost. And then bring this technology in when it's simply unproven and can't catch the defects the way the human inspections can. So on the rail car issues, I'm not a carman and I don't represent the carman, but I can tell you and assure you that they do want more thorough inspections done of cars. And we also want an adoption of the technology that helps catch some of these other defects that the human eye can't catch. So yes, we can work together and achieve a much safer railroad if we're willing to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Cardwell. And Mr. Shannon, I know one of my colleagues talked to you about bringing labor to the table. I have about 30 seconds left, and so this is about the amount of time someone would have to inspect one of these rail cars, but in the time remaining, maybe you can give a full answer to my question about how and what are some of the best ways to include labor in these conversations so that employees are able to help you institute technology and make sure our communities are safe.
From a RailPulse perspective, I would say our members would bring labor in as appropriate into the discussions about how to use the data that comes out of RailPulse. Our goal as RailPulse is to ensure that data is made available, that it's timely, it's secure, and that all of the right people that need to have access to it get access to it. But since we don't have a direct relationship with the labor, I would say that would be through our member companies that do use the data, including the railroads.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am over time by 30 seconds, and it just goes to show, couldn't even answer the questions in the amount of time it takes for folks who are giving that time to inspect brakes in rail cars. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stauber, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're witnessing a technology boom in the rail industry that is poised to make freight and passenger rail safer and more efficient than ever before. During my time as a law enforcement officer, I saw similar technology advance. At first, we officers sometimes met these changes with resistance. However, we often came to realize the great benefits that the technology provided us, whether it helped track down a criminal, improve our response time to a concerned citizen, or kept us safe. Importantly, we were brought into the conversation. We were brought into the conversation. I think it is equally important that our rail workers are brought into the conversation about rail technology, as my colleague just mentioned. Rail workers are the first and last line of defense for safety in the rail industry, but technology can supplement their efforts and enhance their processes, and we should take advantage of American ingenuity. Mr. Cardwell, in your testimony, you mentioned that you want to work with the railroads and private companies to develop the next generation of technology. What are some of the technologies that you and your members are excited about?
I've recently done a couple of agreements with the railroads that have allowed snow removal with these amazing machines that they're using in the high parts of California, and they're doing snow removal much faster. It eliminated quite a few snow removal jobs, for example, and we negotiate those agreements. We're excited about them. Our guys do operate them, but it did take away a lot of jobs in the snow removal area of the work that we do. We've negotiated agreements for car plate where they lay the plates on the rail, where it's a very safety-sensitive job, and they use a plate machine now, and it eliminated 2 or 3 jobs on each gang. So we've negotiated technology and are excited for technology that does eliminate safety. In this case, we wish they would use the technology every day of the week on the railroad tracks. We wish ATI would run regularly, at least once a week. It would be great. It's a good supplement to the work that our track inspectors do. We're not opposed to it, and I want to emphasize that over and over again. We simply don't think there should be a reduction of 75% in the human inspections. It's unsafe.
So how can rail technology companies collaborate with unions such as BMW to achieve the goal of safety?
What was the question again?
How can rail technology companies collaborate with the unions to achieve the goal of safety?
Well, we have the professionals that know this work. They understand it, and they're the best people to come in with the technological groups and talk to them about how these machines could operate, or what would be better, or better refine them. And we're more than willing to take that time to sit with them as a union, and even bringing in members from the field, the professionals, the people that do this work, to help explain and work with these technological groups to figure out what's the best way to do it, the safest way to do it. That's the important thing, is safety. So we're more than willing and have spent time and money doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Shannon, can you highlight how the current regulatory process at FRA has stifled innovation?
I would say the concerns that we might have would be where any kind of regulatory process specified a solution and sort of shut down the motivation for our car owner members and the technology companies we work with to innovate, to chase an outcome, as opposed to build something that's been pre-specified. It's important that we focus on the outcomes and the performance we want out of the system and use the innovation engine that is North American, embodied in the North American technology sector, to come up with the best solutions to address those challenges, as opposed to having the solution mandated for us.
Mr. Gebhardt, same question. Can you highlight how the current regulatory process at FRA has stifled innovation?
We work within the frameworks that the FRA has. On some of these, if we had more outcome-based metrics for success to go ahead and move forward so that we can move forward on the waiver process and then move forward into actual adoption, that could help the process overall.
So outcome-based, not mandating.
Well, outcome-based meaning we state what the outcome would be for this technology to be accepted. So it might have to have 98% accuracy, or it might have to last a certain amount of time. Being more outcome-based on that could help us through the process.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I'm out of time, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Ms. DiLizio, you recognize Mr. DiLizio. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, everyone. I'm particularly glad to see a Western Pennsylvania company and Wabtec represented here. Mr. Gebhardt, I'll start with you. I know the company is doing quite a bit of innovation around locomotive and rail technologies, making lots of products for Amtrak and others across the rail industry. I'll note the bipartisan infrastructure law, I think, was a really important investment that helped support the development of those technologies for Amtrak in particular and others. But I think there's a ripple effect, right, helping other manufacturers, workers. Tell me about some of the work you guys are doing on locomotive technology. What are the opportunities and some alternative energies? What can the Congress be doing? What should we be thinking about to help stimulate some of that development?
Yeah. Thank you, Congressman, for the question. When I look at the technologies we're really working on, we're working a lot with our Tier 4 locomotives.
You lost your mic, Mr. Gebhardt.
Yeah, okay. With our Tier 4 locomotives and also with our modernizations. We're taking, with the Tier 4, 78% reduction in NOx, 70% reduction in particulate matter. With our modernizations, taking older locomotives and bringing them up to modern standards when we do that. The IIJA really helps with that because it opens this up to the short lines, allows them to step into this, and really helps with the funding of that. On the development side, some of the R&D grants that are coming through are helping with the alternative fuels that you had mentioned there. We're working with biofuels, renewable fuels, to make sure that those are capable technologies there. We have also been working with LNG. We have a number of liquid natural gas units that are operating right now as an alternative fuel. These were a lot of things that were developed under some grants that were done. So we are very supportive of continuing these types of grants to really bring this technology forward.
Well, it seems to me there's a business benefit if you can get your fuel and energy costs down. I think there's an air quality benefit for all of us, and so I think this is a good opportunity. The Congress should pay attention here as well. Mr. Cardwell, I want to come to you as well. I pick up on some of the discussion about automated track inspections, and your point's a good one to me. As I hear it, that you and your members are all about better technology, helping the railroads implement this stuff, but you need humans in the mix, you need humans involved. Tell me what this looks like to one of your members, how this technology, how they use it, how you see this being implemented in a way that is safest and that brings to bear the expertise your members have.
Let's just take the ATI machines, for example, the one that was primary discussion today concerning track inspections. Our track inspectors are happy when the ATI machine comes through the territory because it catches certain defects that the human eye can't. And so they're glad to see it come through the territory because it catches geometry measurements that the human eye can't catch. And that's always helpful. So they like when that comes through, but there's many things that these machines can't catch that the human eye can. There's a whole list. In fact, the large majority, 73% of the track defects can only be caught by the human eye. And so they like working with that technology. They're glad when it comes through their region or territory. There's many other. The machinery that is being used today on the railroad is much more technologically advanced, and and they love operating that equipment. It has cut jobs, but we're happy with the machinery because it's more efficient and safer.
And some of the things that you just mentioned, a big percentage, I think 70 or so percent, you're saying that the human eye can only capture. Give me some examples of what that might be.
Sure. So, for example, just a broken rail cannot be caught by the ATI machinery. The rail, what happens when it heats up and it cools, it expands and contracts. And so that rail breaks, and it happens all the time. There's literally probably several hundred broken rails a day across the railroads. And those broken rails can cause derailment, for obvious reasons.
Is that is that the number one cause of derailment? Track issues like that?
Track issues are the number one cause of derailment. I think 50+% of track derailments are caused by rail defects. And most importantly, in switches, in this ATI machinery does not pick up most of the defects inside of a switch. Most derailments are caused within a switch, and where one train goes to another track. It goes from one track to another. And in that switch, there's a lot of defects that cannot be detected by any technology right now.
Very good, Mr. Cardwell. Time is up. Thank you both, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nails, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as we talk about this ATI, you talk about 73%. I'm just going to make a comment. I believe that, East Palestine a couple years ago, a little over 2 years ago, February of 2023, I think ATI is a good thing. I think it really, really is. That technology is available today, and I believe it improves safety. I don't believe the Class 1s really want to go out there and have derailments. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So they're spending an enormous amount of money with this ATI because they want to continue to have what I would say is a very good record on moving goods and services across our country and doing it very safely. I applaud them for that. I don't believe ATI was really ever created to completely eliminate visual inspections. I don't think that was the intent here. I believe it's an augment. It will augment the visual inspections. Now, whether the FRA is saying 75%, whatever, I don't know about that. But I do not believe, when the Class 1s are investing in this technology, it's costing money. I've been around. I've seen these machines that travel to and fro. And it's costing them an enormous amount of money. I believe it's all in the name of safety. And they're deploying these things along the network. And at some point in time, this technology may justify reducing the workforce. I mean, it just makes sense. You mentioned 73%. With this evolving technology, let's say ATI identifies 6 or whatever the number is. Everybody's going to have a number of these flaws, these deficiencies. What happens when the technology is so good, it can identify all of it? That we maybe don't need any of you to do it. Would you support that then, or would you say, well, I just don't believe that's, no?
If the data safety, first of all, Congressman Nils, we thank you for your leadership and your work for us. I would say that if the technology proves safer, then the unions have to adapt to it. Yeah. And we have. Historically, across all levels of machinery, we've been more than willing to allow that technology in as it's proven safe. In this case,
I got a couple minutes. I want to talk about really the Modernization Act, but the point I'm trying to make is management and labor, you got to get together to talk about. We're all concerned about safety. When I was the chairman of the subcommittee, we had all the unions in there. We were trying to get some good legislation on improving safety, but let's understand that I don't believe the Class 1s are out there. They want to see derailments today. And I have to say, for the last couple of years, it's been pretty good. We haven't any mushroom clouds over any of our communities in the past 2+ years, and thank goodness we haven't. So I applaud the Class 1s and everybody else that's working hard to keep our rail as safe as possible. I'm sure you all may be familiar with the bipartisan bill. It's the H.R. 2515, the Tank Car Modernization Act. That's my bill, and I led it with Seth Moulton, Congressman Moulton. This bill will provide Department of Transportation grants through the FRA directly to rail car owners for the purchase and installation of telematics devices with the achievable goal of greatly speeding up the adoption of telematics on the 1.6 million rate cars. I mean, this is just common sense. This is the heartbeat of the car. Why wouldn't we do this if the technology is there? Having telematics on an increasing number of freight rail cars will significantly provide upgraded supply chain visibility, safety enhancements, create maintenance efficiencies, and enable comprehensive telematics solutions for the shippers and the stakeholders in the rail system. That's just common sense, you guys. It's common sense. For far too long, we have talked about increasing the use of freight rail and bringing the rail system into the modern ages, when the solution, it's right in front of us, and has been effectively used by trucking. It's been used by the truck industry for decades. We just don't use it in the rail. Mr. Shannon, please illustrate the position of RailPulse on HR 2515 and how the legislation would impact the entire rail industry.
First, we're very supportive. Thank you very much. How it would influence the industry, I think, is it changes the economics. Our biggest challenge right now with the adoption of telematics on rail cars is the justification of the initial expense of equipping a rail car.
Sure.
And through the lens today of a car owner, they need to do an ROI equation for themselves based on the direct benefits. Those direct benefits may or may not be equal to.
Thank you. Mr. Gebhardt, how do you feel? How's Wabtec? A good deal?
We're very supportive of
Thank you.
of telematics.
I've got 10 seconds, I'm gonna finish up. We've talked to hundreds of people in the rail industry over the past few years. Common sense themes of using freight rail keep coming up. Using rail is complex, it's inconsistent, and can be more costly than other modes. And I want freight rail to be used more. We want it to be used more, not yes. And it's a safe way to transport the goods America needs to thrive and grow. The entire operation system needs to be averse to the modern solutions we give shippers more of a reason to use it. So let's get this done. It's bipartisan. I'm looking forward to working with industry, labor, on how we can make rail the safest possible mode of transportation in the country. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you very much. Ms. Forze, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Webster and Ranking Member Titus, for holding this hearing, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. Mr. Cardwell, under current regulations, if a track inspector finds a track defect, they are required to immediately do one of two things: either take the track out of service or place a speed restriction on the track until the defect is fixed. Alternatively, under AAR's recently submitted waiver, if a railroad is using automated track inspection technology, or ATI, they would have 72 hours to send out an inspector to check the defect, but there aren't currently any requirements to take the track out of service or reduce train speeds until the defect is fixed. As we're all acutely aware, safety regulations often have to play catch-up as new technologies like ATI are developed or deployed, and it seems obvious to me that this is an area that needs to be seriously looked at by the DOT. Can you speak a little about the way in which this loophole in federal regulation can lead to increased risks in rail safety, and why it's important for automated track inspection technology to be subject to the same safety protocols as human inspectors?
It's pretty hard to understand why they would ask for such an exception. It's a serious safety concern that we have, a 72-hour delay of putting a remedy on a defect. Just for a quick explanation, when a track inspector finds a defect, he stops or slows down that track. He can slow the speed down so that it's safer to travel across. He can stop any trains from going over it. He may fix the defect itself, but there's a remedy immediately taken. And in this case, they're asking for 72 hours. I don't know that anyone wants to be around a railroad track where a defect is on that track for up to 72 hours without being corrected. I know I wouldn't go anywhere near it. And it's a danger, it's extreme danger. I think the waiver is extreme.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. I think we all recognize the potential that developing technologies like automated track inspections and AI have to help improve rail safety outcomes and protect our communities from accident. That said, I also firmly believe that it is of paramount importance that these new and exciting technologies are used in conjunction with and under the supervision of human inspectors and other trained rail safety workers, not as a substitute for them. Mr. Cardwell, I'm curious from your experience how you've seen new technologies assist the critical role that human inspectors play in interpreting this influx of tech-generated data, and why you think it's important to have humans, not computers, making rail safety decisions.
The question, we can work together and makes it better, is because our people that do the work know it best. They do the work. We have an average of, I think, 29 years of seniority in the rail industry. Those folks know this work inside and out, and they can work with the people that do this work in conjunction with them and help them make a safer railroad. We believe that we can take the derailments that are happening right now per million rail miles traveled are as high as they've ever been. We did measurements clear back to 2015, and we still have the same amount of derailments today as we did in 2015 per rail mile traveled. We think working together, we can lower that derailment, those derailments in America by using this technology, but also working with the human inspectors and human workers that do this work, and they're professionals, and work in conjunction with them, and we can build a better railroad.
And one final question. It's critically important that innovations in railcar inspection technology are used to support and supplement in-person inspections performed by qualified mechanical inspectors. So how can automated track inspection technology be used to support the vital safety work that our BMWED members perform every day?
What was the question? The ATI machinery catches measurements. It measures the track constantly, and in doing so, a human inspector can't do that. So it works well for what it does. And we believe that they should continue to use it. In fact, we propose they should use it more often, not less, because it does catch those measurements that the human eye can't. It works well. In the areas that it's been used, it works well. We're not opposed to it at all. We just, the current FRA proposal that we had from a year ago is still sitting on the table that can be picked up and used, and it proposes that we use it more often, not less often, and we support that bill.
Thank you for that. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mann, you recognize for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having this hearing, and thank you all for being here this morning. I represent the big First District of Kansas, which is roughly 2/3 of the state, most of the western and some of the eastern part as well. Kansas, my state, is served by more than 4,600 miles of active rail, owned and operated by 14 individual freight railroads that connect our manufacturers, farmers, producers, and natural resources to domestic and foreign customers. These railroads move nearly 40 million tons of freight across Kansas annually and serve as a huge economic driver for the economy. Our freight railroad operations must focus on keeping our communities, consumers, and workforce safe while ensuring our nation's supply chains remain efficient. Overburdensome regulations, rules and regulations can greatly hinder these efforts to move goods and people across the network, and I look forward to hearing from you all today on how Congress can help alleviate some of these burdens. A handful of questions. First for you, Mr. Gebhardt. What are some of the challenges that businesses like yours face when government rules and regulations are inconsistently applied?
Well, consistency, of course, is important there, and making sure that that they can be applied, because we don't want to have a locomotive for every state in order to meet requirements. Also, we don't want to have different varying degrees there. So we try to have consistency. We'd like to try to build Black Fords as much as possible. Our Tier 4 locomotive, we like to build those. We'd like them to have constant standards for that.
Can you elaborate on how a more comprehensive regulatory reform, such as moving to performance-based framework, could provide greater certainty to railroads and to rail suppliers?
Yeah. And this is something that's important to us also. So we've been monitoring our locomotives for a long time now. We talk about telematics. Since 1998, we've been pulling data back on our locomotives. And right now, we have 18,000 locomotives that we pull the data back on. We get 10 million data messages a day. We can analyze all of that to understand how can we extend intervals, how do we work differently, how do we make sure that we improve the product so that it can be a condition-based maintenance, condition-based inspections, and condition-based intervals?
It's important, in my view. Last question, and again for you, Mr. Gebhardt. You know, we often associate regulations with safety, but ignore the positive role that deregulation may have in promoting the exact same outcomes. In the railroad industry, how important have past deregulations been in improving safety outcomes?
I would say, I'll talk more generally about what we do around safety on this. Safety is paramount to all that we do, and we focus very tightly on that. We think about positive train control and such around this. Positive train control, we do 1 million miles a day of data we get back. And so we understand exactly how the trains are operating such there. We then put our TO, our trip optimizer, which is the adaptive cruise control, to help the engineers and conductors operate the trains through the train to drive down the fuel usage on that, but also drive up the safety. The train handling is part of what it does there. We gather all this data, we learn from the data, we make it better, and I think that's what a lot of this big data that people are talking about. We've been doing it now for 30 years, almost 30 years now, pulling all this data back. We learn a lot from it. We're starting to apply AI, but most of what we do is deterministic right now. And whenever we do use AI, we put a human in the loop just to make sure that the right answers are going back on that.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here. Thanks for your time. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Mr. Garcia, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, and to all the witnesses here today. Mr. Gebhardt, your company develops and maintains software used by train dispatchers. For instance, train dispatchers employed by a major commuter railroad continue to experience issues with their dispatching system, developed and maintained by Wabtec. These issues include the system glitching and incorrectly showing train locations. The only solution Wabtec has offered to these train dispatchers is to turn off and restart their computers. While the computers were turned off, no backup system was in place, and the train dispatcher had no way of knowing the location of trains or monitoring on-track worker safety. In other words, the train dispatcher was completely in the dark until the computer restarted. Dispatchers had to restart their computers several times a day, and the issue persisted for years. Mr. Chair, I'd like to request unanimous consent to submit a letter for the record from the American Train Dispatchers Association dated March 27, 2024, to the FRA outlining dangerous flaws where the dispatch system provided inaccurate information and failed to display the position of the power-operated switches controlled by the train dispatcher. This issue occurred at BNSF, which also uses a dispatch system developed and maintained by Wabtec. Mr. Gebhardt, I'm very concerned about the flaws reported by the ATDA and the workers on the ground. What is the average time that it takes for your company to resolve safety concerns that are reported by workers such as train dispatchers?
Well, I'm not aware of the specific issue that you brought up there, but we're more than happy to get back to you on that. For safety issues, we take those very seriously. In fact, we typically get back within hours rather than within days. So I would like to learn more about the case that you brought up there and make sure that I can understand it better and take whatever actions are necessary on that.
And to my question? The time that it takes to resolve safety concerns that are reported by workers, such as train dispatchers.
Yeah, so once a safety case comes into Wabtec, we immediately start taking action there. We try to work through a triage process where we decide what the severity of the safety issue is, and then decide what the short-term containment plan would be, and then what the long-term corrective action is.
Is there an average time on those reports?
I don't have that available.
And what steps do you commit to take to ensure that technology used by trained dispatchers is fixed?
I missed the last word.
What commitments will you take to ensure that technology used by trained dispatchers is fixed?
So we have a rigorous safety process internal. We also work with the FRA, the TSA, and others to make sure we meet all the applicable safety standards. And typically, our internal safety standards are higher.
Thank you. Mr. Cardwell, I understand the flaws with the dispatcher software can pose severe safety risks to workers on the train tracks and the general public. Should new technologies such as dispatch systems be overseen by the Federal Railroad Administration?
Thank you for the question. The answer is yes. When we have workers out on the tracks and the dispatchers are watching our back, they're the ones that keep the trains from coming in on our work groups. And if there's a glitch or there's problems, that puts our workers in peril. And I would argue that it should be regulated. If it's not, and there is an incident where there's a glitch like that, it would be devastating. So the answer is yes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cardwell, and of course, thank you and all the witnesses for being here today. I yield back.
Thank you so much, Mr. Westerman. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the witnesses for being here today. You know, as we talk about innovation and construction and all the things we would like to see, not only in our rail system, but really in the infrastructure across our country. An issue that comes up often is permitting and permitting reform. And as you're aware, in a recent 8-0 Supreme Court ruling that involved the railroad in the Uinta Basin out in Utah, the Supreme Court said something that we've been saying for a long time, that NEPA is a process to review permitting. It's not something that produces an outcome. But I think this is a major decision by the court. And as Justice Kavanaugh said, Congress did not design NEPA for judges to hamstring new infrastructure and construction projects. So I would just like to maybe start with Mr. Shannon and go down the dais or the table and tell me how important permitting reform is in your area.
I'll confess permitting reform is out of scope really for RailPulse. You know, we are the car owners, so we don't get involved in permitting for railroad, new track or anything like that, so I'd have to.
So building more rails wouldn't help your business?
It certainly could, but it is outside of the scope of what we do. It would be more of our members' focus.
Congressman Westerman, thank you for the question. Permitting reform is crucial. You know, we used to be an America of builders. We built things. It is next to impossible to get anything built. And whether you're on the left or you're on the right, these permitting regulations affect us all. And NEPA was never meant to be a bedrock environmental law. It's a process law. And as you know, at the end of NEPA, you can go ahead and build it even if it says there are going to be significant adverse consequences. We have to reform it because it's being used by the loser to hold up projects. Our infrastructure is deteriorating, and it's got to be fixed.
Mr. Gebhardt.
We're not directly involved in the permitting process as a technology company, but anything that helps move more freight by rail and allows more infrastructure to be built would be positive for the industry.
See, I would argue that you are impacted by NEPA because you can't implement your technology if you can't get if people can't get a permit to
Correct.
Build new infrastructure. And I think that's one of the disconnects that we have, that we don't realize just how impactful the permitting process is and the way it's been weaponized to stop things from happening. It's also easy to stop something from happening. The difficult work is in actually building something and making things happen. Mr. Cardwell.
Yeah, we support the NEPA reforms on Brightline and a lot of the railroad that's coming we think it's important.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nadler, you recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cardwell, by law, safety waivers may only be granted if they are in the public interest and enhance safety. Both the National Transportation Safety Board and the Federal Railroad Administration have stated that automated track geometry systems should supplement, not replace, visual inspections. In your view, what rationale have the railroads provided for continuing to pursue the safety waiver, and how does that align with existing safety guidance?
Obviously, I think they're cost-cutting measures. I'm not entirely sure because they're not safe, that's for sure. I believe they're cost-cutting measures. I believe they're job elimination attempts.
You believe what?
Because we were
I
permitting
couldn't hear
use.
you. You believe the cost-cutting measures?
I'm sorry?
Finish your statement. I couldn't hear you. You believe the cost-cutting measures?
Yeah, that's why
You believe the cost-cutting measures what? I couldn't hear you.
all right, what was the question? Oh, I apologize. We believe that they're cost-cutting measures. And that's it. They're definitely not providing a safer railroad. So we believe the attempts are just cost-cutting measures.
Okay, thank you. As you know, automated track inspection systems can detect only one category of track defect, geometry. But inspectors are trained to identify 17 additional types of defects that ATI cannot detect. Why is it so important to search for all potential hazards, not just those related to track geometry?
What was the question? There's 23 defect codes under the FRA, and there's subsets of those defect codes, and it only finds 6. So the ATI technology can only find 6 of the 23 different defects. That's extremely dangerous. That means a large percentage of the defects won't be detected by the ATI. So if we reduce the human inspection, visual inspection, then those defects won't be able to be found. That's a dangerous situation.
Okay, and what would be the safety impact of reducing inspection frequency for those 17 other types of defects from twice weekly to just twice monthly?
That means that we would be going approximately 14 to 15 days between inspections on those tracks. That's dangerous. If there's a track defect out on that track that can't be found by ATI, and it sits there for 14 days with millions of pounds of chemicals and passengers going over those rails, I think that's just unacceptable. It's dangerous.
And can you share how recent technological innovations have helped track inspectors do their jobs better?
Yeah, there's all kinds of technological advances that help us do our jobs better. There's new technology coming regularly in the industry, new machinery that helps the physical labor that our workers do is being enhanced by the machinery that's coming in, and I say it helps keeps the injuries down. It keeps potential death down because the machinery has new technology in it that avoids collisions and things of that nature. So there is great technology out there that's doing great things for our members and keeping them safer. We're willing to adopt those, and we're willing to work with ATI technology as well. We've asked for the data, the information. We've insisted on wanting to know and speak with the people that develop this technology and the people that are overseeing this technology to understand, how it works and what it does. And we continue to be kept away from the technology from the railroads.
Okay, thank you. A moment ago, I asked for the, what would be the safety impact of reducing inspection frequency for those 17 other types of defects from twice weekly to twice monthly. You answered the question. My last question is, what are the railroads doing? Are they in fact reducing inspection from twice weekly to twice monthly?
Yeah, they're not only asking for a reduction in inspections, they're asking for a 72-hour period, up to 72 hours, before they correct the defects.
And I assume you think that either the National Transportation Safety Board or Congress should remedy that.
Yeah, it's just so dangerous. Remedy the defect of 72 hours is completely, if any railroader that's done railroad work were in this room, we just laugh at it.
Thank you. My time has expired. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. I recognize Representative Taylor for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Chairman and Ranking Member Titus, for holding this hearing today, and thank you to all of our witnesses for your testimony and insight and the sacrifices I'm sure you all made to be here. Ohio has 44 operating railroads and over 5,000 miles of track, making Ohio the third largest rail infrastructure state in the nation. With Ohio's presence in the rail industry, adopting and implementing new technologies could result in huge growth for Southern Ohio. Mr. McCown, in your testimony, you highlighted how the United States regulatory process has hindered technological growth in the rail industry. I'm proud that the first bill introduced in Congress, the Regulation Decimation Act, would remove burdensome, unnecessary, and counterproductive regulations that prevent innovation and growth. Mr. McCown, as this committee works on drafting the upcoming Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill, what regulations and/or processes within the Federal Railroad Administration should we be examining to remove regulatory bottlenecks?
Mr. Taylor, thank you for the question, and as a native Ohioan, I appreciate your comments there as well. We need to move from prescription to performance-based policies to make sure that, A, nobody can take advantage of shortcuts, no one's going to be self-regulated, but we're hitting performance metrics. We need to be outcome-based instead of prescriptive. The goal is transparency and incentivizing innovation. Let's be agnostic on the technology that's used to meet and exceed its target. The goal of continuous improvement is to constantly drive down the number of incidents, to make them less severe, to occur less often. By doing this, we're unleashing innovation, and we will see cottage industries further develop and innovate in this area. But by telling somebody you have to do it this way, we're already losing.
Thank you. Implementation of new technologies in our rail industry could help make our tracks safer, reduce delays, and improve product delivery. It's imperative that the development of new technologies and American innovation is encouraged. As one example, Mr. Shannon, I was glad to hear that RailPulse is being utilized throughout Ohio, keeping our communities safe. However, as a small business owner, I understand the difficulties that smaller companies may have in adopting new technologies. Mr. Shannon, from an industry perspective, what can be done to help encourage the adoption of new technologies?
I think that's a great observation. The technology that we're talking about on rail cars is not horribly expensive, but at the same time, for small businesses, small rail car owners, we are talking about a significant investment. And so one thing that can be done and should be done would be providing incentives to encourage the adoption of this technology, financial incentives through CRISI grant or similar public-private kind of incentives.
I heard at one point that it's sort of cheaper to get it on a new car than it is to put onto an existing car. Is that true?
It can be cheaper to put it on a new car. The core technology is very similar, regardless of whether it's a new car or an existing car, but capturing a car in service and getting to that car, locking it down, if you will, so that you can safely install the equipment can cost more for sure. So
fair to say it's a bigger challenge for like short line railroads or
Can
smaller
be
operations?
a bigger challenge for short line railroads, can be a bigger challenge for private car-owning shippers.
Thank you. The benefit that new technologies can provide in preventing accidents should be one of Congress's top priorities. With the East Palestine derailment in my home state of Ohio, we are keenly aware of how important it is to prevent tragedies before they happen. Mr. Gebhardt, your company, Wabtec, produces a couple of different products that seek to prevent accidents. Can you go into more detail about these two technologies that can detect potential accidents and seek to prevent them?
We do a number of technologies that are specifically focused on safety. We have a kinetics inspection technologies platform that uses acoustic technology, thermal technology, visual technology to look for defects, potential issues that are going to be coming along there. We also have technology for incoming inspection into yards, and now we're developing technology that actually will go under the trains to go ahead and inspect for the outgoing inspections to augment the work that the yard workers are already doing there. So we are working to try to make rail safer. We're working with the locomotives, of course, but then we're also working with the rail cars.
Real quickly, anything big on the horizon that we haven't heard about that's coming out as far as this kind of safety technology?
Yeah, I would say probably the most exciting one that we have is what we call our Rail Ghost. It is actually something that's going to go under the trains inside the yards or in sidings and can do a lot of the inspections there. We're working on the visual inspections now. We'll put different measurans on there over time, but it's a very exciting technology. Will augment what the yard workers are already doing.
Thank you, and thank you all very much. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. I now recognize Mr. Desaulniers for 5 minutes for questions.
Very nice pronunciation. It's like you took French, high school French or something. Well, I want to thank you and the ranking member for this hearing. It's fascinating. I represent a district in the East Bay of the Bay Area. I've dealt with innovators in the innovation economy for a long time because I'm old. And a long time ago, I was admonished by somebody in that field, do not let the technology seduce you. So we want to take the value of all this wonderful technology, but make sure it also works in the real world. So Mr. Cardwell, I'll start with you. As a former Teamster member, I have my withdrawal card from many years ago from Local 170 in Worcester, Massachusetts, where I worked for trucking companies, starting as a warehouseman and then later working as a dispatcher. So I know something about, a long time ago, logistics from those two perspectives, working graveyard shifts when I was going to college. So to your point, I think sometimes us who are in the labor field, and I'm a senior member of the Educational Labor Committee, we get accused of being modern-day Luddites and we're against innovation. But my experience is we have evolved to where we see the value, but we want to make sure that the human part of it is connected. And we deal with this on the Aviation Subcommittee, of which some of us are on, is when the technology and the procurement process gets ahead of the human beings, then we have disasters or mistakes which affect everybody, and I would argue sets innovation back. So trying to get that right balance, how are we doing that, particularly in goods movement? All this benefit, which, and I love your comments, Mr. McCown, about performance-based, out-based driven. This should be an example, I think, in goods movement, how we move product, but we have to have humans involved in that. So could you speak to that? How do you engage with management, not just to protect your workers, which I want to be part of, but do it in a way that's thoughtful, that, and I know you do this already, is if humans aren't involved, there's nobody to check, as you've already said, to make sure that the technology is working properly. And if the humans don't understand the technology and we haven't provided the infrastructure in workforce development the way other industrialized countries like the Germans do, it doesn't work. And it just becomes this battle over profit motive and where the money goes to. So how do we fit that balance? And how have you engaged to make sure that you're part of that?
Sure, we want to partner with us, and we are excited about the CRISI grants. We've ourselves are applying for, are going to apply for a bunch of them and have, and so we can train our members with this new technology as well. And that funding that comes in is helpful. We want to partner with anybody who's willing, including the gentleman here, to work on to work on these issues to make sure that our workers are part of this change and evolution in technology. We're more willing to do that, but what we cannot do and will not do is compromise the safety aspect of it. The technology is not proven, and where it is proven, it works well. And we're willing to adopt those technological changes for safety alone. What we cannot do is accept this technology if it's not proven to be safe and if it doesn't catch certain things. It was testified to in the hearing in the Senate hearings that 90% more defects are found by ATI. It's just not true. It can only find up to 6 out of the 23 defect codes within the FRA. So there's no way that it's increased that much. If there were that much increase in defect finds from this technology, then there would be a huge workload increase as well, and that workload hasn't gone up. It's maintained the same. I would argue that we are for this technology and want to continue working with these different groups.
Mr. McCown, I want to ask you, thank you for that question in the short time I have left. Representing an area that's the 5th wealthiest district in the country, but also having a lot of goods movement in there. It's this urban industrial interface in the Bay Area. We've got 4 refineries, hazardous material, and then we've got the Port of Oakland. So trying to manage that has always been a struggle. We've had some pretty good success when the industrial partners have worked with us, but unfortunately, there are some people in the private sector who drive to lots of short-term investment returns. So shortly, how do we balance all of this in an area like that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. You know, I first came to Washington, D.C. working for a South Bay gentleman whose portrait hangs to your left, and so I understand that
I'm
very
aware
much.
of him.
It is a balancing process, and oftentimes the truth is in the middle.
The gentleman yields back. I now recognize Mr. Fong for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, I echo the comments made that there's certainly value to technology and innovation. It's transforming the transportation industry, but we need to see that it moves forward in the rail space. Mr. Gebhardt, the research that Wabtec has been doing sounds very promising when it comes to supply chain improvements. I wanted to get your take on how the federal government can better support the development and commercial deployment of innovative railroad telematics.
Yeah, this is an important topic, and you know, I would break it down into a couple of areas. The first being helping with the development phase with some R&D funding, you know, public-private partnerships around that, because some of these technologies might be 8-10 years away. Making investments on that on a moving target is something that some government encouragement can definitely help with that. And then providing waivers so we can actually get some of the technology out on the track, go ahead and test it. And of course, a safe manner. We always want to make sure we're doing everything in a safe manner there. And then making sure that there's outcome-based approvals for things. I'll give one quick example on this. 0-to-0 is one of our technologies. We've had Trip Optimizer in operation since 2009. But it kicks in at about 9 miles an hour on the way up and about 12 miles an hour on the way back down again. We've worked technology to go from start to finish, from 0 to 0 on the other sides there. And this is an adaptive cruise control. It helps with the, having better fuel, better train handling and such around this technology. And that's something where some help in moving that forward would be demonstrated. We've proven that it's safe. Now we just need to get some test time on that one.
I appreciate that. I think if we've learned anything from 2020 and the pandemic, we need to be investing more in supply chain to ensure that we reduce delays and ensure that essential goods are moving to the market. To Mr. Shannon, I wanted to ask, how are small or regional railroads, short line railroads, how are they being brought into the modernization effort? Are there integration barriers that we need to be cognizant of, cost barriers?
Well, first, I would say the small regional railroads we are actively working with as much as possible, including within our ownership. We have the short line railroads are represented as a class of owners within RailPulse so that we get their insights and opinions in terms of driving RailPulse forward. I would also add that I think the small regional railroads are very important to driving the adoption of this technology because they have such a tight affinity working with the shippers and their customers, and these are, and helping them get the benefits out of this technology. That being said, comment that was made earlier about they are small, they're not as cash rich, and those that have fleets of rail cars that they would like to see instrumented, any help that can be done to help accelerate the adoption of the technology on their behalf or for them would be valuable.
Sure. Well, certainly as someone who represents the Central Valley of California, rail is very important for us in moving our products, whether it's agriculture or manufacturing or energy, oil and natural gas, to where it needs to go. Building off of your answer, what are the biggest policy or bureaucratic obstacles? What are they to deploying sensor-based monitoring and automated track inspection?
Did you say track inspection?
Automated, ATI, yeah.
Yeah, well, RailPulse is not involved in track inspection, so we are telematics on rail cars. That information can be used to improve the safety, the health of the rail cars. It's sort of an answer to your question. I'll comment on what
Maybe Mr. McCown can
focusing on outcomes is probably the single biggest thing, performance metrics, so that we don't hamstring the innovation in the industry.
Thank you. Maybe that question was better addressed to you, Mr. McCown,
Yes.
in terms of
Sure.
what are the biggest obstacles to employing new technologies?
Yes, thank you so much for the question. The truth is that it's not one size fits all. And, a rail track over here is not the same as the rail track over there, yet we're treating them all the same. What we need to be able to do is manage the risk appropriately and then deploy assets, human and technology, to where they're needed. But right now, the FRA is set up where everything is monolithic, it's all the same, and that's just not the best way to evaluate risk. And so these performance-based metrics allow operators to concentrate where the risks are, and they're held accountable if they don't do that.
I appreciate that. I've run out of time. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. I now recognize Mr. Burleson for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gebhardt, artificial intelligence has the potential to revolutionize the world, but also the rail industry as well. From predictive maintenance to infrastructure for optimizing train operations, AI has the capability to not only enhance efficiency, but reliability and safety. And I think that's important to note. Can you shed light on how AI is going to impact the rail industry in a positive way?
Yeah, we have been working very closely with AI and developing that, but we're pacing it based on the real capabilities. We're making sure it's being tested. As I had mentioned earlier, we pull in about 10 million data messages a day from our locomotives around the world, and we process all of that. We've really been working over the last several years, last decade or so, with deterministic rules that are if-then type statements, let's put it that way. Now we're starting to do more and more with AI, but as we understand AI, we always have a human in the loop as that goes back. So we have automated rules that are deterministic. The AI, there's a human in the loop on that. When we look at condition-based maintenance and those types of things, we are using the AI to really pull forward that data so we know where can we extend intervals, where do we need to shorten intervals, and then even within the engineering side, how do we improve the components to make sure we can continue to extend that and focus on safety. We make sure we focus very much on how do we make our products safer and safer. But AI is a fantastic tool. At this point, we're really doing a lot of things with human in the loop. The only place that we're doing full AI is really around visual tools, where we have a new rail spiker that we're doing, where we can actually use AI in order to shoot the spikes in automatically. Those types of things that are non-safety related and things that that really take a lot of the visual technology. That's where we're using a lot of AI.
Thank you. You had mentioned earlier about Rail Ghost, is that right?
Yes.
Can you describe that? So this is a robotic device?
Yeah, this is a robotic device, and the goal is that longer term will be robotics and visual AI. So it has about 16, 18 wheels on the sides there, and it actually flows under the train. And each of the wheels snaps back as it goes under the train. And what we're doing now is we're putting cameras, thermal guns, other things on this platform, and therefore we'll be able to augment the inspections as it goes through. And we're very excited about it. And we can move it at about 12 miles an hour, so it can move very quickly through there, be able to put the data right in the hand of the yard workers to go ahead and see exactly what's going on there, maybe follow up with an inspection afterwards on those types of things. And then what's also pretty cool about it is that we put it in what's called turtle mode, where it can actually drop down inside the rails, and then the train can just pull right over it and just go right out on the outgoing side of things. So we're really excited about the technology, working with a couple of the Class 1s on this at this point to make sure that we can meet all their needs that they're looking for.
And Mr. Gebhardt, is there anything that is holding you back in that regard? Are there any regulations or laws that we need to evaluate that are going to hold your industry back from innovating?
Yeah, so on that particular case of Rail Ghost, there's not much holding us back on that one. I had mentioned the 0-to-0, trying to get the waivers for 0-to-0 to go ahead and move forward with that, which is the extension of our Trip Optimizer adaptive cruise control product. That's one that we're working to try to move that one along.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questions. My first question, Mr. Cardwell, you mentioned that the average employee in the industry has been active for 29 years in earlier testimony. A good blend of youth and experience helps to foster responsible innovation adoption. Do you have any concerns about an aging workforce in your industry? And if so, what needs to happen, in your opinion, in order for this to be addressed?
I have no concerns about the age. The average time that they spend in seniority in the classification is 29 years. We have a lot of young employees right now, too. It's a good job, it's a good paying job, and it's a career. These guys love what they do, so they stay for a long time. They typically don't go out to other jobs. They're interested in the technology, and they want to participate in it, as all the young people are these days. And they want to participate and operate this new machinery and technology as well. They're excited about it. We believe there's a good relationship that can be formed there, but we can't compromise safety when we do it.
Thank you. Next question, Mr. McCown. In your role as former president of Alyeska Pipeline, you oversaw critical infrastructure operations in some of the harshest and most remote conditions in the United States. How do you assess the applicability of advanced safety and inspection technologies such as automated track inspection or acoustic monitoring in similarly rugged and isolated environments like the Alaska Railroad?
Chairman Begich, thank you very much for your question. I thoroughly enjoyed my time in Alaska, and my wife would still like to move back there permanently. You know, pipeline safety regulations have evolved over the years into more performance-based. We also use different tools to measure different aspects of the pipeline. And in the pipeline industry, that has changed dramatically over the last 30 plus years. Your pipeline's almost 50 years old now with an enviable safety record. So it can be done. It's a combination of deploying technology, also people, and determining where your risks are. If you take that holistic system, there's no reason why we should be up here trying to drag rail into the 21st century. You know, we need these tools, and the pace of technology and what's available today is different than it was just a couple years ago.
And to follow up on that, from your experience, what federal policies or regulatory flexibilities would best support the deployment of remote sensing and predictive maintenance systems in frontier state infrastructure?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, no two sets of track are alike, different operating conditions. And, fortunately or unfortunately, regulations are set up for a one-size-fits-all, which is, again, why I'd like to see more performance-based. But at the same time, when a waiver gets held up, and I hate that term waiver, it's an equivalency. We're not waiving anything. We're meeting the standard a different way. That's what encourages innovation. And so at the department, not just in FRA, these get held up for far too long. And in some cases, the standard they want you to meet is actually higher than the regulations, and the well-meaning DOT career folks pile things on. We need more flexibility, not less. And once you have a waiver that's being done over and over again, it's time to change the regulation. And for Alaska, Alaska's a different operating environment, and people need to understand that and, quite frankly, defer to folks who know best.
I so appreciate that you mentioned that, Mr. McCown. You understand better than perhaps anyone in this room just how different Alaska can be as an operating environment, and we do need to make sure our regulations are flexible with respect to the environments in which they apply. One question, I'm going to open this up for any of the witnesses here. One of the challenges that we have in rail is the deployment cost of new rail. A lot of the conversation today focused on operations and innovations within the existing operating infrastructure. What technologies or opportunities for new technologies are on the horizon that can lower the cost for new rail deployments?
I'll go ahead and take a quick stab at it. Regulatory certainty is required to deploy capital. Where you have risk, right, in any business, you're not going to invest into something. So we need a stable regulatory environment where the rules aren't going to change depending on who's in the White House or what bureaucrat is in charge 2 years from now. So by laying those rules down and by removing rules that no longer make sense, we can lessen the cost to build new things, to build new rail tracks, to build new highways that are safer and better than the existing ones that are out there.
I appreciate that, and I would just encourage the industry generally, as we're looking at innovations across the industry, let's also be sure we're looking at innovations that will drive down the cost and accelerate the deployment of new rail. Certainly, in my home state of Alaska, we've had a longstanding dream to connect the lower 48 states through Canada to Alaska. We'd like to do that in a capital-efficient manner, and we'd like to do that in an expeditious manner, and I think innovation is going to be one of the ways that we actually make that dream achievable. With that, my time has expired. I'd like to thank the witnesses and ask if there are any further questions from any members of the subcommittee who have not been recognized. Seeing none, that concludes our hearing for today. Thank you again to the witnesses for your testimony. The subcommittee stands adjourned.